Standing in the fluorescent-lit aisles of Tesco on a Wednesday evening, surrounded by the familiar hum of refrigeration units and the rhythmic beeping of checkout scanners, millions of British families make decisions that will fundamentally shape their health for years to come. Yet what most shoppers don't realise is that behind the carefully curated displays, the reassuring traffic light labels, and the promises of value, lies a complex web of nutritional compromises, marketing strategies, and industry practices that deserve far greater scrutiny. As a public health researcher at Imperial College London, I have spent the better part of 2 decades investigating how our food environment influences population health outcomes. And what I have discovered about Britain's largest supermarket chain warrants serious attention from every consumer who cares about what they put on their family's table. The modern British supermarket represents one of the most sophisticated retail environments ever created, engineered not merely to sell products but to influence behaviour at the most fundamental level. Tesco alone serves over 20 million customers weekly, commanding roughly 27% of the UK grocery market, which translates into an extraordinary power to shape the dietary habits of an entire nation. This dominance comes with responsibility, yet as recent investigations by organisations including the BBC and Which have demonstrated, there exists a troubling disconnect between the healthy image these retailers cultivate and the nutritional reality of products lining their shelves. The consequences of this gap between perception and reality manifest not in quarterly earnings reports but in the chronic disease statistics that continue to plague our society, from the alarming prevalence of childhood obesity to the cardiovascular conditions that claim thousands of British lives prematurely each year. Understanding how supermarkets operate requires appreciating that these are not neutral marketplaces but carefully designed systems optimized for profit maximization, and whilst profitability itself is not inherently problematic, issues arise when commercial interests systematically conflict with public health objectives. The pricing structures, promotional strategies, product placements, and labeling practices employed by major retailers all serve specific commercial purposes, and consumers navigating these environments without adequate knowledge find themselves at a profound disadvantage. The UK government has recognised these dynamics, implementing regulations that came into force in October 2025 restricting multi-buy promotions on products high in fat, salt, and sugar, though notably Tesco had voluntarily adopted such restrictions earlier following sustained pressure from health advocates. This regulatory intervention acknowledges what public health professionals have long understood, that the architecture of consumer choice within supermarkets requires oversight to protect population health, particularly among vulnerable groups including children and lower-income families who face the greatest barriers to accessing nutritious food. The first secret that Tesco, and indeed most major supermarkets, would prefer remained obscure concerns the systematic mislabeling of products as healthy when their nutritional profiles suggest otherwise. BBC Radio 5 Live Investigates conducted research visiting the UK's top 5 supermarkets and discovered that Tesco, alongside Sainsbury's and Morrisons, were stocking products extraordinarily high in salt and saturated fat within sections explicitly marked as healthier choices and healthy diet meals. In one particularly egregious example documented by the investigation, Tesco's Healthy and Diet Meals section featured a lamb hot pot containing 8.5 grams of saturated fat, representing 45% of the recommended maximum daily amount for an average adult. To place this in perspective, consuming this single meal would leave a person with barely half their daily saturated fat allowance remaining for breakfast, lunch, snacks, and beverages combined, yet the product's placement suggested it represented a health-conscious selection. Charlotte Sterling-Reed, a registered nutritionist who reviewed the findings, expressed genuine shock at items being marketed under the Healthier Choices banner, noting that such practices fundamentally undermine consumers' ability to make informed decisions. The British Dietetic Association characterised these supermarket practices as unhelpful and confusing, arguing that retailers were actively working against public health messaging by creating false equivalences between genuinely nutritious options and heavily processed alternatives that happen to carry vegetarian or plant-based credentials. This matters profoundly because research consistently demonstrates that consumers rely heavily on contextual cues within the shopping environment, trusting that products grouped under health-focused signage have undergone meaningful nutritional screening. When that trust proves misplaced, as the BBC investigation revealed, shoppers end up consuming levels of saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars far exceeding what they intended or believed they were purchasing. Following the BBC's findings, both Hertfordshire and West Yorkshire Trading Standards Services, which serve as principal trading standards partners for Tesco and Morrisons respectively, announced they would make further inquiries with the supermarkets regarding compliance with food safety laws covering health and nutrition claims. Tesco's response proved instructive, apologising that some products were mistakenly included under the healthy and diet meals signage and promising immediate rectification whilst emphasising that nutritional information remained clearly listed on packaging. This defence, however well-intentioned, misses the fundamental point that consumers should not require a nutrition degree to navigate a section explicitly designated as containing healthier options. The very purpose of such categorization is to simplify decision-making for time-pressed shoppers, and when that categorization proves unreliable, it represents a systemic failure with real health consequences for families across Britain. The second secret involves the staggering sodium content concealed within Tesco's ready meal offerings, products that have become staples for millions of British households juggling work, childcare, and the countless demands of modern life. Research published in the British Medical Journal examining the nutritional content of supermarket ready meals found that 96% of ready meals exceeded the World Health Organization's recommended sodium density, with only 4% meeting the international health standard. More recent analysis specifically examining major UK supermarkets' ready meal ranges revealed that Tesco topped the list for overall salt content, with their ready meals containing a combined total of 42.1 grams of salt across the products surveyed. To contextualise this figure, the NHS recommends adults consume no more than 6 grams of salt daily, meaning that a single Tesco ready meal could easily contain half or more of one's entire daily allowance before accounting for any other meals, snacks, or condiments consumed throughout the day. The disparities become even more concerning when examining premium versus basic product lines, as one might reasonably assume that paying more would deliver superior nutritional quality alongside enhanced taste. However, analysis comparing basic branded ready meals with premium equivalents found that, on average, basic versions contained 8% less salt than their premium counterparts. ASDA demonstrated the largest percentage difference between ranges, with their extra special luxe offerings containing at least 10% more salt than basic range equivalents, suggesting that consumers paying premium prices were actually receiving nutritionally inferior products. Tesco Finest sausage and mash emerged as a particularly troubling example, not only containing 838 calories and 57.3 grams of fat, but also representing a significant sodium load that would account for 41.9% of the average adult woman's daily calorie quota and 33.5% for adult men. The Sainsbury's Taste the Difference sausage and mash, whilst not a Tesco product, provides useful comparative context, containing almost 3 grams of salt, representing approximately half the NHS recommended daily allowance in a single meal. When consumers encounter a figure like 2.6 grams of salt in a 200-gram tube of original flavour Pringles and recognise this as substantial, the realisation that supposedly wholesome ready meals from trusted supermarket chains contain equivalent or greater amounts should prompt serious reconsideration of convenience food reliance. The Food Standards Agency investigation from 2003 found high salt levels in 83% of ready meals, and whilst reformulation efforts over the subsequent 7 years reduced this somewhat, with only 2 of 6 products still exceeding 2.4 grams of salt per portion compared to all 6 previously, the fact remains that the overwhelming majority of ready meals fail to meet international health standards for sodium content. This persistent excess of sodium carries profound implications for cardiovascular health, as excessive salt intake directly contributes to hypertension, which in turn represents a primary risk factor for stroke, heart attack, and kidney disease. The NHS has identified salt reduction as a critical public health priority precisely because population-level decreases in sodium consumption translate directly into reduced cardiovascular mortality. Yet, despite industry assurances about reformulation efforts and commitments to healthier products, the empirical evidence demonstrates that the vast majority of ready meals available in Tesco and other major supermarkets continue to deliver sodium loads incompatible with cardiovascular health. For families relying on ready meals several times weekly, this cumulative exposure represents a significant and largely unacknowledged health risk, particularly given that many consumers remain unaware of the sodium content in their convenience foods and trust that products from reputable retailers meet reasonable nutritional standards. The third secret concerns the sophisticated deployment of food additives throughout Tesco's product ranges, particularly synthetic preservatives, colorings, and flavor enhancers that appear on ingredient lists as e-numbers, an alphanumeric code that conveys little meaningful information to most consumers. The UK Food Standards Agency maintains an approved list of additives and e-numbers spanning colors, preservatives, antioxidants, sweeteners, emulsifiers, stabilizers, thickeners, and other categories, with most additives only permitted in certain foods and subject to specific quantitative limits. Whilst all approved additives have theoretically passed safety assessments, the reality proves considerably more nuanced, as safety evaluations typically examine acute toxicity rather than the long-term health effects of chronic, low-level exposure to multiple additives simultaneously consumed as part of modern ultra-processed diets. Recent developments highlight the evolving understanding of additive safety, as demonstrated by the European Food Safety Authority's reassessment of titanium dioxide, designated as E171, which serves primarily as a colorant in various food products. Initially declared safe in 2016, a subsequent assessment in 2021 identified the possibility of genotoxicity, the ability of a substance to damage DNA, leading the EFSA to withdraw approval for use within the European Union. Notably, the UK's Committee on Toxicity disagreed with this ruling, meaning titanium dioxide remains permitted for use in British food products despite being banned in Northern Ireland as part of its continued alignment with certain EU regulations. This divergence illustrates a critical point about food safety regulation, that scientific consensus remains elusive regarding many additives, and the precautionary principle applied varies significantly between jurisdictions, leaving British consumers exposed to substances considered too risky for use elsewhere. Preservatives containing nitrates and nitrites, designated as E249 through E252, present another area of legitimate concern, as these compounds can form nitrosamines, many of which possess carcinogenic properties. The Food Standards Agency published a report acknowledging that whilst nitrates and nitrites can form these carcinogenic compounds, the assessment of risk requires balancing potential harms against the food preservation benefits these additives provide, particularly in preventing bacterial growth in processed meats. This cost-benefit framing, however reasonable it may appear from a regulatory perspective, places consumers in the position of unwittingly accepting cancer risk in exchange for product shelf stability and convenience, a trade-off that many would reject if presented explicitly rather than buried within technical regulatory assessments. The cumulative exposure to multiple additives of concern represents an under-researched area, as safety testing typically examines individual compounds in isolation rather than the realistic scenario of simultaneous consumption of numerous additives across multiple products throughout the day. Tesco has made selective efforts to address additive concerns, launching a range of breads in 2007 made without artificial additives, removing emulsifiers, flavoring, and preservatives through the use of longer fermentation processes lasting up to 18 hours. While such initiatives deserve recognition, they simultaneously highlight that standard Tesco bread products do contain these additives, and the premium pricing typically attached to cleaner label alternatives effectively creates a two-tier system where those with greater financial resources can more easily avoid additive exposure whilst lower-income families continue consuming products laden with synthetic compounds. The Food Standards Agency requires that additives used in foods must be labelled clearly in the ingredient list, either by name or number, yet this transparency proves hollow when most consumers lack the specialised knowledge required to interpret whether E6-1, E951, or E407 represents cause for concern. The broader context of additive use connects to the proliferation of ultra-processed foods throughout Tesco's aisles, products that have undergone substantial industrial transformation, incorporating multiple additives including artificial colorants, synthetic flavors, sweeteners, emulsifiers, and other compounds designed to enhance palatability, extend shelf life, and reduce production costs. Edger Nielsen, lead author of research examining ultra-processed food consumption across 8 countries, including the UK, noted that these foods impact health precisely because of alterations during industrial processing and the incorporation of artificial ingredients. The study found that in the UK, where ultra-processed foods comprise over half of total caloric intake, approximately 14% of early deaths could be attributed to adverse effects of these foods, translating to nearly 18,000 premature deaths annually. These mortality figures reflect not merely individual food choices, but the constructed food environment within which British consumers operate, an environment where ultra-processed, additive-laden products dominate supermarket offerings whilst genuinely whole, minimally processed alternatives occupy comparatively limited shelf space. The fourth secret that warrants careful examination concerns the widespread practice of shrinkflation, whereby manufacturers and retailers reduce product sizes whilst maintaining or even increasing prices, effectively imposing hidden price increases that disproportionately affect consumers already struggling with cost of living pressures. Recent investigations by Which documented numerous examples of this deceptive practice across products sold at Tesco and other major supermarkets, revealing the extent to which British shoppers are being systematically shortchanged. Aquafresh Complete Care Original toothpaste represents one of the most egregious cases identified, having increased from £1.30 for 100 millilitres to £2 for just 75 millilitres at Tesco, Sainsbury's, and Ocado, representing a staggering 105% price increase per 100 millilitres when properly calculated. Consumers examining shelf prices might notice the 70p increase and consider it reasonable given general inflation, but the reality involves paying significantly more for substantially less product, a deception enabled by manipulating package sizes rather than transparently adjusting prices. Gaviscon heartburn and indigestion liquid provides another troubling example, shrinking from 600 millilitres to 500 millilitres whilst maintaining the £14 price point at Sainsbury's, representing a 20% increase per 100 millilitres that consumers would struggle to detect without carefully comparing package sizes over time. The practice extends beyond healthcare products into everyday grocery items that form staples of British diets, with Nescafe Original Instant Coffee having shrunk from 200 grams to 190 grams at Tesco, Morrisons, and ASDA, representing a 5% reduction that translates into a corresponding price increase when calculated per unit weight. Cadbury multipacks of Freddo and fudge bars decreased from 5 bars to 4 at Sainsbury's, Ocado, and Tesco, yet the price remained unchanged at £1.40, meaning consumers now pay 35p per bar rather than 28p, a 25% increase disguised as product reformatting. The seasonal chocolate market demonstrates particularly aggressive shrinkflation tactics, with quality street tubs having reduced from 600 grams to 550 grams, whilst prices at Morrisons climbed from £6 to £7, representing both overt and concealed price increases simultaneously. Terry's Chocolate Orange Ball Toffee Crunch dropped from 152 grams to 145 grams at Tesco whilst maintaining the £2 price, a 5% size reduction that few consumers would notice unless specifically comparing current packages with those purchased previously. Kit Kat 2-finger milk bar multipacks reduced from 21 bars to 18, with prices at Ocado increasing from £3.60 to £5, representing a 53% jump that combines both shrinkflation and conventional price increases to maximize revenue extraction from consumers. Riena Suraz, retail editor for Which, characterized these practices as particularly deceptive given that families currently experience significant financial strain from rising food costs and impending holiday expenses, arguing that supermarkets need greater transparency about pricing to help consumers identify genuine value. The cumulative impact of shrinkflation on household budgets proves difficult to quantify precisely because these changes occur gradually across hundreds of products, creating a death-by-a-thousand-cut scenario where no single adjustment seems dramatically unreasonable, yet the aggregate effect substantially erodes purchasing power. Money Wellness noted that products sold in supermarkets and elsewhere genuinely are shrinking, with prices often staying identical or worse still increasing, meaning British households face a double squeeze from both conventional inflation and concealed shrinkflation simultaneously. This practice proves particularly insidious because it exploits well-documented psychological tendencies as consumers anchor price judgments on nominal shelf prices rather than calculating unit costs, and packages shrink incrementally enough that size differences prove difficult to detect without direct comparison. Tesco and other major supermarkets could address this transparency deficit by prominently displaying unit prices and historical size information, yet they conspicuously fail to do so, suggesting tacit complicity in manufacturers' efforts to disguise price increases through package manipulation. The fifth secret involves the premium brand illusion, whereby supermarkets including Tesco charge substantially higher prices for premium own-label ranges such as Finest, despite these products offering negligible or even negative nutritional advantages compared to value equivalents. Analysis comparing basic branded ready meals with premium counterparts found that basic versions contained 8% less salt on average than premium equivalents, directly contradicting consumer expectations that premium pricing reflects superior quality across all dimensions, including nutritional value. ASDA demonstrated the largest percentage difference between ranges, with extra special products containing at least 10% more salt than basic range equivalents, meaning consumers paying premium prices received nutritionally inferior products, a perverse outcome that underscores how marketing narratives diverge from empirical reality. Research conducted by Suffolk Trading Standards examining value, standard, non-supermarket brands, and premium supermarket brands including Tesco Finest found that value apple juice, self-raising flour, and cheddar cheese had absolutely no compositional difference from pricier equivalents, meaning consumers could save £1.49 weekly or £77.48 annually by switching to value versions of just those three items without sacrificing any meaningful quality. The study revealed that for certain products, value ranges proved compositionally superior, with value chocolate spread containing more non-fat cocoa solids than standard equivalents, and 83% of taste testers preferring the value version. Value oven chips showed no nutritional difference from standard versions, yet 53% of participants preferred the value option in blind taste tests, demonstrating that higher prices frequently reflect branding and packaging rather than genuine quality differentials. However, the research also identified products where standard ranges offered superior composition, with chicken Kievs from standard lines containing higher protein and less fat than value equivalents, and pork sausages from standard ranges featuring higher protein and pork content alongside lower fat levels. These findings suggest that optimal shopping strategies require product-specific knowledge rather than blanket assumptions about range quality, yet supermarkets deliberately obscure these nuances through marketing that suggests premium ranges represent uniformly superior choices. Tesco Finest, launched in 1998 with 130 products and relaunched in 2013 with over 1,500 items, has become positioned as the supermarket's jewel in its crown within a London convenience stores consistently well stocked with Finest products whilst remaining remarkably low in value-led lines. This distribution pattern suggests strategic decisions to position premium products more prominently in affluent areas whilst limiting access to budget alternatives, effectively price discriminating based on store location and presumed customer demographics. Industry observers note that Tesco Finest spans over 80 categories, offering extensive choice, includes substantial vegetarian options and high fiber lines catering to long-term consumer trends, and provides pricing that generally feels like good value for premium-tier products, particularly with clubcard discounts applied. Yet this positive assessment focuses on subjective attributes like variety and perceived value whilst overlooking the fundamental question of whether premium pricing correlates with meaningful nutritional superiority, and the evidence suggests it frequently does not. The sixth secret concerns multi-buy promotional strategies that encourage overconsumption and contribute substantially to household food waste, practices that supermarkets including Tesco have employed extensively despite growing awareness of their detrimental effects on both health and environmental sustainability. Research examining the impact of price promotions on unhealthy food and drink purchases found that removing price discounts proved more effective for reducing purchase volume compared to removing multi-buy offers for 10 out of 12 food and drink groups, particularly products where price reductions occur more commonly than multi-buy promotions. The study demonstrated that price promotions induce both consumption and waste through behavioral effects associated with increased household inventory and stockpiling as consumers purchase quantities exceeding immediate needs in response to promotional pricing, leading to products spoiling before consumption. Investigations by Feedback examining food waste on UK farms highlighted that supermarket practices, both fair and unfair, may drive farmers to waste around 10 to 16% of their crops, demonstrating how promotional strategies create waste throughout the supply chain rather than merely at the consumer level. Parliamentary committee inquiries on food waste in 2016 raised the issue of multi-buy offers with supermarket executives, acknowledging these promotions as significant contributors to household waste. Research by WRAP revealed that £15 billion worth of edible food waste continues to be generated by British households annually, with supermarket marketing strategies creating environments that encourage customers to buy and subsequently waste food. Tesco acknowledged in 2018 that their food waste reduction targets had not been met despite numerous initiatives including improved surplus food distribution to charities and providing staff access to surplus food that cannot be redistributed. The company's in-store waste figures fail to reflect how trading practices drive waste throughout supply chains, with order cancellations, last-minute specification changes, and other supermarket behaviours forcing suppliers to discard perfectly edible food. The UK government's implementation of regulations in October 2025 restricting multi-buy promotions on products high in fat, salt, and sugar represents official recognition that promotional strategies systematically conflict with public health objectives, though notably Tesco had voluntarily adopted such restrictions earlier following sustained advocacy pressure. The seventh secret involves small print disclosures that bury crucial information about country of origin, ingredient percentages, and other factors material to informed consumer decision-making within dense text blocks that few shoppers have time or inclination to parse carefully. Tesco faced criticism for bacon packaging that prominently displayed Union Jack imagery on the front while stating only in small print among the ingredients on the back that the bacon was made using British and EU pork, a disclosure format that enabled consumers to form mistaken impressions about product origin based on front-of-pack branding. The National Farmers Union Scotland called on Tesco to clarify cheese labels following similar concerns about fair and transparent labelling practices, arguing that retailers bore responsibility for ensuring consumers could easily identify product provenance. Consumer forum discussions revealed that Tesco appeared to be steadily removing country of origin information for numerous products ranging from fresh produce to tinned foods, with this practice not occurring at other major supermarkets, suggesting deliberate policy decisions rather than inadvertent omissions. Which investigations found multiple examples of fruit and vegetables at major supermarkets including Sainsbury's ASDA and Aldi with no visible origin labelling on shelf edges or products themselves, despite regulatory requirements mandating country or place of origin labels on meat, fish, fresh fruit and vegetables, honey and wine. The consumer group discovered misleading signage including tomatoes from Morocco, parsley from Italy, and sweet mini peppers from Spain sitting on shelves under large banners decorated with Union Jacks and the words championing great British quality at an Aldi store visited. Tesco exhibited inconsistencies whereby whole-owned label pineapples carried country of origin information whilst packets of pineapple chunks in adjacent aisles did not, a practice legally permissible because regulations exclude processed fruit and vegetables from origin labelling requirements, yet profoundly unhelpful for shoppers attempting to make informed choices. Lee Stiles, Secretary of the Lee Valley Growers Association, noted that consumers often find themselves misled into believing produce on display is British by the abundance of Union Jack surrounding shelves, only to discover upon closer inspection that the majority is imported or country of origin information is absent, giving shoppers false impressions that they are supporting British farmers and growers when purchasing foreign produce. The eighth secret concerns misleading portion sizes that enable manufacturers and retailers to present nutritional information in ways that substantially understate the calories, fat, sugar, and salt that consumers actually consume when eating realistic serving amounts. Since 2014, EU regulation on food information has mandated that companies display nutritional details per 100 milliliters or 100 grams on packaging to enable direct product comparisons, but regulations also permit brands to voluntarily include their own per portion values on nutritional labels, creating opportunities for manipulative presentation. Companies define their own portion sizes, perhaps because this flexibility allows them to obscure product unhealthiness, as dietitian Bridget Benelam, who co-authored a British Heart Foundation report titled Portion Distortion, explained. It appears more favourable to declare that a serving of crisps, chocolate, or similar items contains 100 calories instead of 200 calories, with the food industry not being as transparent and realistic as it ought to be. A small 300 milliliter bottle of Tropicana, typically purchased in meal deals, may seem like a single serving, yet a footnote on the nutritional label states that the pack contains 2 servings, information consumers frequently overlook when assessing calorie content. Consumers pay attention to calories but often fail to notice small print specifying 15 grams or 5 pieces, leading them to underestimate actual consumption by factors of 2, 3, or even 5 when they consume entire containers or packets. Which, research from 2023 revealed that portion information on food packaging proves often confusing, inconsistent, or unrealistic, making it difficult for people to obtain clear pictures of how much sugar, fat, and salt they are consuming. When the Consumer Champion surveyed 1,265 people on portion sizes, many incorrectly estimated how many servings popular supermarket foods contained, demonstrating widespread confusion about manufacturer-defined portions. Which expressed concern that small, unrealistic recommended serving sizes can mislead people using front-of-pack labeling into thinking they consume fewer calories and less fat, sugar, or salt than reality. Whilst larger portions and packs presented as better value during periods of soaring food prices prove problematic because research consistently shows bigger portions encourage people to eat more due to unit bias, whereby we perceive a serving or pack as one portion regardless of actual size. The ninth secret involves date label confusion that causes substantial food waste as consumers misunderstand the distinctions between use by, best before, display until, and sell by dates, leading them to discard perfectly edible food based on misguided safety concerns. Research by Too Good To Go found that a quarter of British consumers admitted throwing away food past its best before date before checking whether it remained edible, whilst a third disposed of food solely due to the best before date without any quality assessment. Sell by and display until dates were cited by 11% and 14% of respondents, respectively, as causing confusion that ultimately led to increased food waste. The organisation noted that one reason households represent main contributors to food waste is because many consumers don't know differences between these various date labels, with best before dates relating to food quality, whilst used by dates concern food safety. The European Food Information Council explains that you should not eat food past its use by date, but you can eat food past its best before date if it looks, smells, and tastes fine, a distinction lost on substantial portions of the shopping public. UK supermarkets Waitrose and Marks & Spencer have begun scrapping best before dates on hundreds of items to help cut food waste, acknowledging that these labels contribute to unnecessary disposal of edible food. The Co-op removed use by dates from its own brand yogurts to help combat the £100 million annually of yogurt thrown out by UK homes when still safe to eat, replacing them with best before dates to encourage sensory assessment rather than automatic disposal. These industry changes represent tacit admissions that date labeling practices have historically contributed to food waste rather than serving consumer interests, with supermarkets including Tesco having maintained confusing labeling systems for decades despite awareness of their wastefulness. The fact that Tesco has not adopted similar reforms as comprehensively as some competitors suggests either institutional inertia or insufficient commitment to sustainability objectives, allowing preventable food waste to continue, whilst the company promotes environmental credentials through other initiatives.